What if everything you thought you knew about the Roloffs was about to change forever? For nearly 2 decades, Little People, Big World has been a story of perseverance, family, and legacy. But today, that legacy stands on trial, quite literally. In a stunning turn of events, Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler have reportedly been found guilty of fraud, and the court has ordered them to pay Amy Roloff a staggering $1.5 million. It's the kind of twist that no one saw coming, a legal and emotional earthquake shaking the very foundations of Roloff Farms and the family that built it. How did it come to this? How did a once-loving family business turn into a battlefield of betrayal, money, and broken trust? And what does this mean for Amy, the matriarch who once shared dreams and farmland with Matt, now standing on the other side of a courtroom? For years, fans have watched the Roloffs navigate fame, family feuds, and financial struggles. But this is different. This isn't just another argument over who gets the farm or who's to blame for the family split. This is a judgment day, a legal reckoning that could redefine the Roloff story forever. In today's deep dive, we're unpacking the full truth behind the shocking fraud allegations, the court's explosive decision, and the emotional fallout tearing the Roloff family apart. We'll explore what really led to this legal showdown, what evidence came to light, and why so many fans are now questioning everything they thought they knew about Matt and Caryn's empire. Stay with us because what's unfolding behind the scenes of Little People, Big World is far bigger than any TV storyline. It's the battle for justice, legacy, and the Roloff name itself. Hello viewers, welcome back to my channel. For Roloff family latest news update, please subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon. The seeds of the Roloff family feud were planted long before the courtroom ever came into play. To truly understand why things have escalated into a full-blown legal nightmare, with accusations of fraud, betrayal, and a $1.5 million judgment, we need to go back to where it all began: Roloff Farms. For decades, Roloff Farms wasn't just a business. It was a symbol of hard work, family, and the dream that Matt and Amy Roloff built together from the ground up. Situated in Helvetia, Oregon, the 34-acre property became the heart of Little People, Big World, drawing thousands of fans each year for its famous pumpkin season and giving the Roloffs their unique legacy. But beneath the charm of family festivities and farm life, there were cracks, emotional, financial, and deeply personal ones. When Matt and Amy divorced in 2016, the question of who would keep the farm immediately became a flashpoint. Amy, still emotionally tied to the land she'd raised her children on, struggled to let go. Matt, ever the businessman, wanted control to expand, redesign, and push forward. The negotiations were painful. After months of tension and emotional episodes captured on TLC cameras, Amy made the heartbreaking decision to sell her portion of the property to Matt. Fans vividly remember her tearful farewell, packing up her memories, and driving away from the place she once called home. That moment marked more than just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a family divide. Because for Amy, selling the farm wasn't just a financial transaction, it felt like losing her identity. For Matt, it was an opportunity, a new chapter, one he hoped to share with his girlfriend, Caryn Chandler. And that's when the controversy deepened. Caryn, who had worked for years as a manager on Roloff Farms, suddenly found herself at the center of public scrutiny. Fans began questioning her involvement, accusing her of influencing Matt's decisions, especially around the sale and redevelopment of the property. Some viewers felt Caryn had taken over what Amy built, stepping into both her professional and personal space. Social media exploded with debates, theories, and sharp criticism. Even though neither Matt nor Caryn publicly confirmed any wrongdoing, the perception alone was enough to fracture trust within the family and among their followers. Zach and Jeremy, Matt and Amy's twin sons, were caught in the middle. At first, both expressed interest in buying part of the farm to continue the Roloff legacy. But negotiations reportedly fell apart. According to multiple reports and fan discussions, Matt's asking price was far higher than what his sons could afford or were willing to pay. What could have been a smooth generational handover turned into a bitter standoff. Zach, feeling rejected and disillusioned, decided to step away completely, moving his family, including Tori and their kids, to Battleground, Washington. Jeremy, on the other hand, purchased his own property nearby, declaring that his family was building their own legacy. The farm that was once meant to unite generations had now divided them. And through it all, Amy watched from the sidelines, hurt, disappointed, and increasingly alienated from the home she once fought so hard to keep. In interviews, she admitted how difficult it was to see Matt and Caryn's plans for the same property she had loved and nurtured for decades. Meanwhile, Matt pushed forward with massive renovation projects, including his controversial dream home, a multi-million-dollar mansion built on the same land he and Amy once shared. For fans, it was symbolic, a declaration that the old chapter was officially over. But behind the public smiles and construction updates, tension simmered. The farm's ownership battle had left behind a web of unresolved emotions, broken trust, and legal complications. And soon that web began to unravel. Rumors began circulating that business documents, tax filings, and investment accounts tied to the farm weren't as straightforward as they appeared. Allegations of mismanagement, financial secrecy, and disputes over profits began to surface, not just between Matt and Amy, but involving others close to them. To some, it looked like the family's worst fears were coming true, that the very legacy they'd spent decades building was crumbling under the weight of pride, resentment, and money. As fans watched these personal battles spill into the public eye, many wondered, was this just another family disagreement or something much deeper? The sale of Roloff Farms had been meant to bring closure. Instead, it ignited a storm that continues to rage years later, one that would eventually lead the Roloffs straight into court. And as we'll see next, that courtroom wasn't just about numbers and signatures. It was about betrayal, accusations of fraud, and a shocking judgment that changed everything. The story takes a darker turn as the focus shifts from family tension to something far more serious: allegations of fraud, deception, and betrayal. What began as emotional disagreements over the Roloff family legacy has now evolved into a full-blown legal and financial scandal, one that has reportedly shaken the family to its core. It all started with questions surrounding Roloff Farms' financial structure. When Matt Roloff took over full ownership of the property following his divorce from Amy, many believed that it marked the end of their long-standing disputes. However, behind the scenes, things weren't nearly as settled as they appeared. According to reports, several financial documents and internal agreements tied to the property's sale and later development began raising red flags. Sources close to the situation claimed that discrepancies were found in farm revenue records and trust fund allocations, funds that were initially intended for the family's long-term use and the grandchildren's future. The alleged inconsistencies appeared small at first: minor accounting differences, missing receipts, and unbalanced ledgers. But over time, they added up to something impossible to ignore. What really triggered the chain reaction, though, was reportedly a financial audit linked to the farm's recent business transitions. As Matt expanded his real estate ventures, including renting portions of the land for events, tour, and short-term stays, Amy allegedly began to question where some of that income was being directed. She reportedly noticed that certain payments and property profits didn't align with previous partnership agreements they'd both signed years earlier, back when the farm was a shared asset. By this point, Amy had already moved on in her personal life, remarried, and begun focusing on her new ventures. But when she reportedly discovered that some of the trust fund accounts set up during their marriage were being accessed or altered without her knowledge, she decided to take a closer look. What she found, according to leaked court documents and fan-circulated reports, painted a troubling picture, one that pointed toward potential mismanagement, and in some cases, outright deception. Fans quickly caught wind of the situation when fragments of these documents appeared online. Screenshots, summaries, and alleged financial spreadsheets began circulating across social media, claiming that hundreds of thousands of dollars in shared assets had either gone missing or were redirected into side projects under Matt's management company. The public reaction was explosive. Longtime viewers of Little People, Big World were torn between disbelief and outrage. Some fiercely defended Matt, insisting that he had every right to handle the business as he saw fit after buying out Amy's shares. Others, however, sided with Amy, arguing that this was yet another instance of her being undermined and excluded from the legacy she helped build from the ground up. As the online debate intensified, Amy reportedly filed formal legal action, citing concerns over financial misrepresentation, breach of fiduciary duty, and possible fraud. The lawsuit wasn't just about money, it was about trust, legacy, and accountability. Then came the bombshell. Court proceedings began revealing years of private disputes, secret negotiations, and hidden transactions that had been buried under non-disclosure agreements. What had been portrayed on television as a simple farm handover between ex-spouses now appeared far more complicated. A tangled web of contracts, valuations, and accusations that no one in the family could ignore anymore. Insiders claimed that during the hearings, Amy's legal team presented detailed records showing a pattern of undisclosed fund transfers, questionable tax write-offs, and shifting ownership percentages across multiple farm-related entities. In contrast, Matt's team defended the actions as standard business restructuring, insisting there was no malicious intent, only poor communication and evolving management practices. But one moment stood out, what fans have since dubbed the turning point. Reportedly, a set of emails and signed statements surfaced during discovery, appearing to contradict earlier testimony. Those documents allegedly tied Matt and Caryn to decisions involving Roloff Farms Trust, suggesting that funds earmarked for maintenance and family use may have been diverted elsewhere. That revelation sent shockwaves through both the courtroom and the fan community. For Amy, this was more than just a case, it was personal. Those close to her described her as heartbroken but determined, feeling that the truth had finally begun to surface after years of silence. For Matt and Caryn, however, the allegations struck at the heart of everything they'd built, their reputation, their future, and the dream that Roloff Farms had always symbolized. By the time the second week of testimony concluded, what had once been whispered rumors had become front-page tabloid headlines. The Roloff family wasn't just divided anymore, they were under legal scrutiny. And as each side prepared for what was shaping up to be a long and bitter court battle, fans could only watch, wonder, and ask the same haunting question. Had the Roloff family's dream farm become the very scene of its downfall? When the courtroom doors finally opened, what had once been family drama became a full-blown legal spectacle. The Roloff name, once synonymous with heartwarming reality TV moments and pumpkin season smiles, now echoed through courthouse halls as lawyers, reporters, and fans packed the room to witness what many called the trial that ended the Roloff legacy. The case centered around Amy Roloff's claim that Matt and his longtime partner, Caryn Chandler, had misused family trust funds and concealed profits from property and farm-related ventures. Amy's legal team presented a series of financial records that reportedly showed discrepancies, transfers, missing invoices, and income that never seemed to make its way into the joint trust the family had once agreed upon years earlier. Key witnesses and testimonies. One of the first witnesses was a former accountant who worked briefly for the Roloff farm business. He testified that he had raised internal concerns about unusual transfers and that after doing so, his contract was quietly terminated. This statement sent a wave of murmurs through the courtroom, and according to several reports, Amy was seen nodding silently as her attorney emphasized the alleged pattern of concealment. Then came the testimony that changed the tone entirely. Amy herself took the stand. Her voice reportedly trembled as she recalled decades of work, sacrifice, and her trust in the family business. She said, "I never wanted it to come to this. I wanted fairness, not a fight." Amy described moments during her marriage when financial decisions were made without her consent, especially in the years following her exit from the family home and her partial sale of the farm. She alleged that key documents were kept from her, and that Matt and Caryn had continued to profit from family assets that she still technically had ownership in. When it was time for Matt Roloff to testify, the atmosphere shifted. Matt, visibly defensive yet determined, maintained that every transaction was by the book. He explained that the farm's financial structure was complicated, and that he'd spent years juggling debts, repairs, and expansions. He claimed Amy had no proof of intentional fraud, adding, "Everything I've done for the survival of this farm and our family's future." Caryn Chandler, called to the stand next, became the emotional flashpoint of the trial. Dressed simply and often glancing toward Matt, she insisted she had no role in managing the family's funds and was only supporting Matt through stressful years. But Amy's attorney pressed her hard, showing emails that appeared to involve Caryn in farm business discussions, including one thread where she reportedly referred to Amy's portion as dead weight. That line hit like a thunderclap. Amy looked visibly shaken while Matt lowered his head. The courtroom went silent for several seconds before the judge called for order. The emotional confrontation. At one point, Amy directly addressed both Matt and Caryn, her voice breaking as she said, "I built that farm with you. Every inch of it holds memories, sweat, and dreams. And now it feels like I'm fighting strangers for the life we built." Those who were present said it was one of the most emotional moments of the entire proceeding, a raw confrontation that wasn't about numbers or contracts anymore, but about betrayal and heartbreak. Matt's expression remained tense. Caryn reportedly wiped away tears, though some observers questioned whether they were from guilt or exhaustion. The media frenzy and fan division. Outside the courthouse, the frenzy was explosive. News vans lined the street and social media lit up with the hashtag Roloff trial. TLC fans who had followed the family for nearly 2 decades were deeply divided. Some sided with Amy, calling her the heart of the family and accusing Matt and Caryn of letting greed destroy everything. "Amy deserves every penny if this is true," one fan wrote. Others defended Matt, arguing that Amy was holding onto old resentment and that the farm's finances had always been complicated. Entertainment blogs and tabloids dissected every courtroom moment, every facial expression, every whispered exchange between Matt and Caryn. Even castmates from Little People, Big World, including Zach and Tori, were reportedly keeping their distance, with sources claiming the younger Roloffs wanted nothing to do with the chaos. The arguments and final phase of the trial. As both sides made their closing arguments, the tension in the room was palpable. Amy's lawyers painted a picture of betrayal cloaked in business, arguing that Matt and Caryn had used Amy's trust to quietly enrich themselves while erasing her contributions from the family story. They ended their statement by calling the case not just about money, but about integrity. Meanwhile, Matt's defense hit back hard. His attorney argued that the financial records were misinterpreted, that Amy had already received her fair share during the farm's buyout, and that the entire lawsuit was an emotional reaction to personal wounds rather than a matter of law. Still, it was clear the judge was deeply moved by the testimonies. Observers noted her careful attention to Amy's words, her concern about the missing documents, and her insistence that family trust is not an excuse for poor record-keeping. As the day came to a close, the Roloffs left the courtroom separately, Amy with her legal team and quiet resolve, Matt and Caryn together but visibly strained. The decision had not yet been announced, but by this point the damage was already done. The Roloff family, once united by the charm of their farm and the magic of their TLC story, now stood publicly fractured, their legacy rewritten not by love or labor but by lawyers and ledgers. It was the moment everyone had been waiting for. After weeks of tension, testimonies and emotional back and forth inside the courtroom, the verdict finally came down. The air was thick with anticipation as the judge entered the room, carrying the weight of months of speculation and years of family turmoil. Fans of Little People, Big World who had followed every development online knew this was more than just a legal decision. It was the climax of a story that began decades ago on Roloff Farms. When the words "guilty of financial misrepresentation and breach of fiduciary duty" echoed through the courtroom, a gasp swept across the crowd. Cameras clicked, reporters leaned forward, and the Roloff family members sat frozen. The judge ordered Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler to pay Amy Roloff $1.5 million in restitution, marking a dramatic conclusion to one of the most emotional chapters in LPBW history. The judge's reasoning was detailed and deliberate. He explained that while there wasn't evidence of malicious intent, there was clear proof of mismanagement, blurred financial boundaries, and improper handling of joint assets, particularly concerning the farm's trust in several property-related transactions. Amy had long argued that her share of profits, once promised through verbal agreements and prior arrangements, had been quietly diverted after her divorce. The court agreed that she had been denied fair compensation and transparency. The judge's words struck a chord. Partnership, whether in marriage or business, requires honesty, and where trust is lost, accountability must follow. It was a line that instantly trended online. Fans called it the quote that defined the Roloff legacy. Amy Roloff's reaction was raw and deeply emotional. For years, she had spoken about feeling erased from the farm she helped build. As the verdict was read, witnesses described Amy lowering her head and wiping away tears, visibly trembling. Chris Merrick, her husband, reached out to hold her hand, whispering words of comfort. To many fans watching online clips from reporters outside the courthouse, it was a moment of vindication, a long-awaited sense of justice. Later, Amy briefly addressed reporters as she exited the courtroom. Her voice was steady but full of emotion. This was never about the money. It was about honesty, about standing up for what's right, even when it's painful. Those words instantly flooded social media, with fans praising her courage and perseverance. In stark contrast, Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler left through a side exit, avoiding cameras and questions. The silence from their side was deafening. For hours, fans speculated on social media. Had they expected the outcome? Would they appeal? Some posts hinted that Caryn looked visibly shaken, while Matt appeared pale and stone-faced. It wasn't until later that day that Matt broke his silence with a short statement posted to Instagram. It read, "This has been an incredibly painful process. I respect the court's decision but strongly disagree with the conclusions reached. Caryn and I have always acted in good faith and we're exploring our next steps." Caryn's response came hours later in a separate post. She expressed her sadness over how things had unfolded, writing, "I never wanted this to divide our family further. I love Matt and his kids and I hope time can heal what this trial has broken." But fans weren't quick to forgive. The backlash online was fierce. Twitter, Facebook, and Reddit exploded with reactions ranging from disbelief to outright anger. Many sided with Amy, calling her the heart of Roloff Farms and accusing Matt and Caryn of greed and betrayal. Amy built that farm from the ground up. She raised her kids there, worked the land, and believed in that legacy. The least she deserved was honesty. Others pointed out that this verdict could forever change the Roloff brand. Some fans vowed to boycott future projects involving Matt and Caryn, saying they no longer represented the wholesome image that once defined Little People, Big World. Still, there were a few who sympathized with Matt and Caryn, suggesting that the court's decision might have been too harsh. They argued that after decades of business entanglements and emotional complexities, mistakes were bound to happen. Yet the overwhelming public narrative leaned in Amy's favor. Hashtags like Justice for Amy, #Roloff verdict, and Farm Legacy trended for hours after the ruling. Even longtime TLC viewers admitted they had tears watching the coverage, not because of the money involved, but because it felt like the symbolic end of an era. The verdict also reignited old wounds between the Roloff siblings. Some reports suggested that Zach and Jeremy, who had remained publicly silent throughout much of the trial, were privately divided on the issue. Sources close to the family hinted that Zach quietly reached out to his mom after the ruling, while Jeremy remained focused on his own ventures, distancing himself from the controversy. Outside the courthouse, fans gathered with posters and messages of support for Amy. Some even brought flowers, thanking her for standing tall. In a brief, emotional exchange caught by local reporters, Amy told one fan, "This wasn't easy, but sometimes the truth has to come out no matter how much it hurts." As the dust settled, one thing was clear: the verdict didn't just expose financial wrongdoing, it exposed emotional wounds that had never truly healed. For years, the Roloffs had symbolized family, faith, and perseverance. But now, the cracks in that image were impossible to ignore. The $1.5 million payment was more than a financial penalty, it was a statement. A statement that legacy can't be built on secrecy, that honesty still matters even in the world of reality television. And as Amy finally walked away from the courthouse, reporters noted that she smiled faintly, not with triumph, but with quiet peace. For the first time in years, she seemed free from the weight of old promises and betrayals. Meanwhile, back on Roloff Farms, the mood was somber. Employees described Matt as distracted and heartbroken. Work reportedly slowed, and plans for future expansions were temporarily halted. Caryn, too, was said to be keeping a low profile, avoiding the spotlight that once brought her so much attention. In the weeks that followed, the story continued to dominate headlines. Talk shows debated whether the verdict would lead to the end of Little People, Big World altogether. Fans speculated whether Amy's victory might inspire her to write another book, perhaps one telling the full truth of what really happened behind the scenes. But more than anything, the verdict represented something much deeper: closure. For Amy, it was justice long overdue. For Matt and Caryn, it was a public reckoning. And for fans, it was the heartbreaking realization that even the most beloved TV families can crumble under the weight of money, pride, and broken trust. The courtroom may have gone silent that day, but the echoes of that verdict, guilty and ordered to pay $1.5 million, will haunt the Roloff legacy for years to come. The verdict may have been read, but the story is far from over. For Matt Roloff and Caryn Chandler, the aftermath of being found guilty and ordered to pay $1.5 million has created a storm that extends far beyond the courtroom. Financially, this ruling is a major blow. While Matt has long been perceived as the family's savvy businessman, this case has chipped away at that reputation. The judgment not only drains a substantial amount of his assets, but also threatens the very foundation of what he's built, Roloff Farms. Sources close to the family suggest that the farm's financial future may now be in jeopardy. Some reports claim Matt has been exploring the possibility of selling off additional portions of the property or refinancing to cover legal costs and the massive payout. For Caryn, the consequences go beyond money. Her public image has taken a major hit. Once viewed as Matt's supportive partner and the woman who helped him through post-divorce life, she's now facing a wave of backlash. Fans have flooded social media with criticism, labeling her as part of the problem rather than a victim of circumstance. It's clear that the court case has left a scar not just on the Roloff brand, but on Caryn's personal reputation as well. The couple's appearances together have reportedly grown less frequent. Insiders suggest that the stress of the trial, combined with the social media outrage, has created tension between them. While Caryn has stayed mostly silent, Matt's carefully worded online posts seem to reflect both exhaustion and frustration. For a man who once stood proudly at the center of his family's legacy, he now finds himself fighting to restore both trust and credibility. Meanwhile, Amy Roloff's story is taking a different turn. After years of emotional pain, from her divorce, public scrutiny, and feeling sidelined by the farm's direction, this verdict represents a moment of vindication. Friends close to Amy say she feels both relieved and validated. But beyond the legal victory, Amy's focus now seems to be on healing and moving forward. She's been spending more time with her husband, Chris Merrick, and sharing glimpses of their quiet, joy-filled moments online. Cooking, traveling, and reconnecting with her kids and grandkids, Amy appears to be rediscovering happiness outside the shadow of the Roloff farm drama. Fans have celebrated her strength, calling this new chapter a well-deserved fresh start after years of conflict. The ripple effect of this case, however, extends even further, all the way to TLC and Little People, Big World. For nearly 2 decades, the show has relied on the tension, love, and resilience of the Roloff family to draw viewers. But this court case has blurred the line between reality TV drama and real-life scandal. Insiders say that TLC executives are now in deep discussion about the show's future direction. There are rumors that the network might take a break before filming the next season, hoping to give the family time to recover and rebuild their public image. Others speculate that producers may lean into the controversy, framing the fallout as a redemption arc or a turning point for the remaining cast members. Either way, the network's decision will determine whether Little People, Big World continues as a heartfelt family story or transforms into something much more somber and reflective. Fans are divided. Some argue that the show should end, believing the family deserves privacy after such a painful ordeal. Others insist that now, more than ever, viewers need to see how the Roloffs rise from the ashes, to watch Amy's healing, Matt's redemption, and perhaps even the possibility of reconciliation between old wounds. What's certain is that the verdict marks a definitive shift. The Roloffs are no longer just a family navigating the ups and downs of farm life. They're now the center of one of reality TV's most dramatic real-life scandals. Their next steps, whether toward forgiveness, recovery, or further separation, will define not just their personal futures, but the legacy of Little People, Big World itself. The cameras may stop rolling, the courtrooms may empty, but for the Roloffs, the battle between pride, justice, and family isn't over yet. It's only evolving. In the end, the Roloff family story has become something far greater and far more tragic than just a reality TV drama. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when greed, love, and legacy collide under the bright lights of fame. What began as a story of unity and perseverance, a small family on a farm in Oregon overcoming challenges together, has turned into a lesson on how success can divide even the closest of hearts. Matt Roloff once dreamed of building something timeless, a farm that would stand for generations, a legacy his children could cherish. But as years passed, that legacy became tangled in money, pride, and control. The dream that once symbolized family became the very battleground that tore it apart. And when love and ambition mix with unresolved pain, the results are rarely gentle. Amy Roloff, despite enduring heartbreak, betrayal, and public humiliation, has emerged as the emotional heart of this saga. She didn't win through revenge or wealth, she won through resilience. Her strength, her grace in the face of adversity, and her ability to move forward with compassion have made her story one of quiet triumph. Matt, on the other hand, now faces the heavy cost of choices made in the name of ambition. Once the builder of dreams, he now stands as a symbol of how easily those dreams can collapse when family becomes secondary to fortune. The verdict may have ended a legal battle, but it also marked the end of an era, the closing of a chapter that once inspired millions. As the dust settles, one can't help but wonder what's next for the Roloffs. Will there be reconciliation, or has the damage run too deep? The farm still stands, a reminder of both what was built and what was lost. In the end, the legacy of the Roloffs teaches us something deeply human, that no matter how much fame, money, or success one achieves, it all means nothing without family, forgiveness, and love. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.